Okay, guys, on the UKFC group the other day, we had a request as to a bit of understanding and learning as to why the view is the difference between people that are targeting the cob and people that are against the targeting of cob. And I got in touch with Rob Kyle and asked him for some guidance, and he pointed me to Bruce Mann to give some information and insight as to what's the status is of the stock of the cob and how they are under jeopardy, so that we can further make up a better informed decision as to whether we want to target them or not.
Sure. How's it, Jamie?
Thanks.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand that our cob is really in trouble. There are three species. There's the square tail, there's the Daga or dusky cob, and there's the silver cob down in the Cape. And we're talking about the Daga Salmon or dusky cob in this little interview. And this fish is really in trouble. They only mature at 1 meter in length, which is about a 10 kilo fish. That's the size that these fish are maturing. So anything smaller than that is a juvenile. Secondly, these fish
and that means they won't reproduce.
They can't reproduce until they reach a meter in sort of length. They are estuarine dependent as juveniles, which mean that they live in estuaries when they're small. They don't spawn in estuaries, they spawn out at sea. But the small little fish at about that size will swim into the estuaries, and that's where they live for the first few years of their life. And look at our estuaries. I mean, they're shot. So it's a bottleneck species because already its kind of nursery habitat is compromised. Okay. Add to that the fishing pressure on our cob. Through our tagging work, we've understood that they're hell of a resident when they're juvenile. They live in that estuary and then they move into the surf zone, but they stay there. And the guys club them, in that area. So they get fished hard as juveniles. When they reach adulthood, they actually start migrating and they move up the coast. We're not sure where the whole sort of spawning area is, but we know that the Durban area is very important to spawning. And you guys know where those aggregation sites are. I mean, there are lots of them. There's the Griqua, there's the pipes, Umkamas, there's the pipe at Mabzimtoti, and there are other pinnacles that people have learned over time. Those fish aggregate onto those reefs or features, wrecks, particularly at night and at this time of year. August, September, October, November is the prime time for these cob to spawn. So the population has shrunk. We've estimated now through our population assessments that we're dealing with about 1 to 5% of the original pristine cob stock that used to be in South African waters. So we've got like 1% of that left. Now you've got guys fishing on these spawning aggregations of adult cob. This is the last fish left of this population that are spawning. It's the golden goose that's producing.
And I think, as we were saying just now, when before we were chatting, that you were saying they produce maybe 1 million a row, and 1% of those die. So that argument of I only take one, you're still affecting that whole breeding stock on that pinnacle that's aggregating there, and potentially 1,000 just for this season.
Yeah, for sure. So if you go and fish on those aggregations, if you can picture it in your mind, a lot of you guys will dive and spearfish and what have you. You can see those tightly sort of grouped shoals of fish. If you catch one of them, it spooks the whole shoal. They all get upset. Very often now you've got sharks that are conditioned into these areas that come and smash these fish. It upsets the whole kind of behavioral rhythm of what's going on. So apart from just catching that fish out of the population, you're also disturbing the behavior that takes place.
That could have been a potential spawning activity that evening. You mess it up, then it's going to wait another few days.
And to just go into your sort of how many eggs do they produce, I don't have the figures exactly in my head, but a mature cob that's just reached maturity at about 1 meter will produce, say, 1 million eggs in a spawning season. Of those, less than 1% will ever reach maturity. A lot of them just get eaten in the plankton. So there are very few of those that survive. A big cob that's reached kind of 2 meters in length can produce an order of magnitude more eggs.
Sure.
So she can produce like 5 million eggs. And the eggs that she produces are slightly bigger, they've got more yolk, they've got a better chance of survival than the one that's just reached maturity. So it's those big old fish that are really important, and that's why we have that limitation of no more than one fish bigger than 110. That's, you've got a bag limit of one. That's to try and protect those bigger old fish.
So those bigger fish that are 25, 30 kilos that are the supposed trophy fish.
Those are the prime fish that we mustn't touch.
Yeah, which is often the ones that you get on those deep marks.
Correct.
And not so much from the shore where you can release them.
Yeah, and I think talking about deep is the other factor. Is if you're on a boat and you go and target these fish, you guys will know that you bring a cob up, even in sort of 20 meters of water, that the swim bladder ruptures and it pushes the stomach out the mouth. That's, you're seeing the stomach inverted coming out of the mouth. It'll often bite the stomach. That kind of thing. It's difficult to release those fish. You can do it. You can vent them with a hypodermic needle, or you can let them down on a downrigger. But you've got to be rigged up to do that, and on a ski, it's almost impossible. So
you've got to be carrying a kilo of weight.
You've got to be carrying a big weight. You've got to have another rod made up. You've got to have either a sequelizer kind of, it's like a BOGO grip that releases, or you use an inverted hook and you put it on its lip and let it down to the depth. But to do that, and especially if you on a ski and they're rocking and rolling, and it's not easy to do it on a ski boat.
No.
So from that point of view, certainly at this time of year, I would encourage guys not to target those animals.
Is there a time of year when obviously they're breeding now and they're aggregating? If you actually spend the time throughout the year targeting them, if you were desperate to catch those fish, and you had the ethical view that you don't want to disturb the future population, but you wanted your one a year, is, say for argument's sake, March to June a better time to maybe target them and you having less impact on them?
Sure, I think so. But also you'll find that there are a lot fewer around at that time of year.
You're going to have a lot more blobs, which is why people don't do it.
You're going to struggle to find them.
Okay, so it is this particular time, as you say, from their August, September, October, November is their prime spawning time, when you're going to catch the most of them. But you're actually doing the most damage potentially to the future of the stock.
I mean, ideally we would like to have a closed season over that time. And
the same way the shad have. And
the recommendations have been made to government, but things are just.
So would the closed season be that August?
It would be over that time, over that period.
Okay, so no catch in that time. Okay, that's interesting.
But it's not happening yet. I mean, we made the recommendations, but
and we've seen what that's done to the likes of shad on the bait marks, where they've actually prolific and more common now than the last month.
If you can enforce it, if you can actually have it, get the KZN Wildlife Act or have enforcement so that people obey the fishing regulations, then they work.
No, for sure. And even like I was saying before, that MPA where we used to struggle to catch them from the surf, and a friend of mine is catching them regularly now. So that Dwesa one, that MPA has shown that backing off for 4 to 5 years has a massive improvement on the stock.
There is a lot of poaching at Dwesa. I was there in May, but even so, a lot of the guys that are poaching are sort of not geared up to really catch cob. Fortunately, and there are a lot of fish, and that is a very important nursery area for cob. So the Bashi River system and the sort of reefs north and south of the Bashi are really important for juvenile cob, and there are still reasonable numbers, but it's one of the last, there and Breda are the two areas that I can think of where we've still got...
Where the estuaries are still in pretty good condition.
Correct. Sundays is another good one, but that just gets really heavily fished.
Because it's also a holiday destination. Okay, awesome. Cool. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Bruce. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Hopefully that helps you.